There's no way around it. It is brutal news to hear that Rashawn Slater is out for the entirety of this upcoming season, and it will have a huge impact on the Chargers' chances. But with an injury this serious, many are questioning if Rashawn Slater will ever get back to his all-pro form.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, it's a tough one today.
It's a horrible one. This is one I never wanted to do. I didn't want to have to talk about this, but unfortunately, life has a way of hitting you in the face sometimes, and the Chargers will be without their star left tackle, Rashawn Slater, and that is going to cause a lot of reverberation all across the Chargers offensive line. So we have to figure out how they're going to be able to juggle and make things work. And we got to talk about also the Chargers have a game that they are playing on Sunday against the New Orleans Saints. We get to see, hopefully, the first time on the football field, Rocket Sanders and Taylor Heinicke trying to stake his claim to be the backup quarterback for this team.
There's going to be a lot of negative we have to talk about today, and we're going to talk about the best way the Chargers can try to minimize the loss of Rashawn Slater. You cannot replace him, even if you swap, Joe all over to left tackle. But the way, where you go from here to try to still salvage this upcoming season and give them their best chance. But there's no way around it. There's no replacing him. Rashawn Slater, after signing a historic $114 million 4-year contract and $92 million guaranteed, is now going to miss the entirety of the 2025 season with a patellar tendon rupture. And that is just a really brutal injury. And we'll talk about the specifics of the injury. But mainly, I just want to start with the impact of this, David. We talked about the reverberations. Joe Walt is going to go to left tackle. We'll get more into that. Trey Pipkins goes to right tackle. All of those things are going to happen. But at the same time, like this, just for Rashawn Slater, for one of the best left tackles in the entire National Football League, to, after having already missed most of the season, have this happen to where now you're going to have missed most of 2 full seasons now is pretty brutal.
It's awful. I can't help but feel just horrible for Rashawn Slater and his family after, really coming off of being on Mount Everest, right? Getting a crowning achievement of your career, getting it to that next contract after your rookie contract where you first, really start to make some really significant money. And, of course, the money is one thing, but, Rashawn Slater, he loves his teammates, right? He didn't make this whole situation difficult. He was there. He showed up. Yeah, he might have sat out a little bit until the contract got hammered out, but him not being on the field is horrible. This is a top 5 player in the Chargers organization and a top 5 tackle in the NFL, in my opinion, in the middle of his prime. So this is something that the Chargers, of course, never anticipated. I don't think anybody anticipates these type of injuries happening to your most important players. And, you have to mourn it, but unfortunately, there's no time to waste. You have to be able to move on, and that means trying to figure out how you fill the massive shoes that Rashawn Slater leaves behind.
Yeah, and I think it just affects kind of what the ceiling is for this team. This offensive line, if they had one redeeming quality, it's the fact that they could say they have a top 2 tackle duo in the league right there with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. That is something you can build your offense around. That is a point of strength for you to be able to game plan with. You don't have that now with the way that this is going to have to all be reshuffled. Now, you do have coaches. You're going to have to work around it, and a lot of it's going to have to do with that. And the Chargers do have depth there. I think the problem with that, and you'll hear that throughout the show today, is you're hoping to have to call on that depth for maybe a few games, guys that can come in and tread water for you until your stars can come back. To have your star get a brutal season-ending, career-altering, potentially injury is just not something that any team can be able to fully prepare for or be able to replace the drop of a hat. It's just not possible. And the specific injury is what really is cause for concern here, because it was a patellar tendon, which is a doozy. Like, there's just no way around it. I think some think it's like an ACL or something like that. It's more serious than an ACL or one of the more common knee injuries that you see. And there is, concern. Like, this is what JC Jackson had, right? That's the easiest kind of way to put it there, where it's like, we've seen a Chargers player in 2022 suffer a ruptured patellar tendon. And JC Jackson may not have come back for other reasons as well, because that just didn't seem like a fit. And it just felt like, from the moment he stepped on the field, it wasn't going to work for them in their first game. But at the same time, this is a really hard injury to come back from. It's something that Victor Cruz had as well when he was a superstar and never came back the same. Jimmy Graham was able to come back from it and play well afterwards. But Daniel Popper on his Hops with Pop show did talk to the Angels, or one of the Angels team doctors, someone who works at Cedars-Sinai that has a lot of history with this, and said it is something that is more difficult for players who rely on speed and athleticism and have to cut and do things of that nature. So not impossible for an offensive lineman to come back for this. Out of the positions, being someone in the trenches, it's easier to come back from, than JC Jackson or Victor Cruz potentially. And you feel good about the player that is going to be asked to do it, because, from all accounts, Rashawn Slater is an incredibly hard worker. I think he was on his honeymoon right when he was doing pass sets, on the beach or whatever it was. Like, this is someone that you feel like football is life. He told you as much even during his contract. You could just, the negotiations, you could tell he just wanted to be out there with the guys and didn't really care how much money he was going to make. But it still just all has to heal correctly. Like, there's so many things that have to go into play here. Hopefully he just gets the proper amount of time to come back and try to get back to that form he had before, which is really tough to do with this injury.
Yeah, there really is no guarantee, and unfortunately, according to the numbers, it is actually probably very much against that probably happening. And this is from a Bolt Beat article here. A recent study from the National Library of Medicine showed that 79% of NFL players who suffer from a torn patellar tendon do not return to their previous form. According to the study, 86% of players do not return to start more games than they did before the injury. So this is something that you have to really pay attention to, the level of severity of this particular injury. It is a 6 to 12 month recovery time. Obviously, Rashawn Slater is a monster. He's a beast. He is a very, very hard worker. We've seen that, even before he got drafted, the videos in the weight room of, him just throwing around unbelievable amounts of weight. Like, this guy is a warrior. And I firmly believe that we will see Rashawn Slater back on the football field, but we also have to keep in context, there is some adversity he's going to have to overcome.
Yeah, and I read those numbers from Bolt Beat as well, and I think it's important, to know that the context isn't really there, right? That doesn't take into account what position any of those players are playing, or at what point in your career you got that type of injury, right? Like, obviously, if you got the injury at 32, you're probably not going to play more games after coming back from that than you would have beforehand. So there's a lot of missing info in there. I don't want to raise the alarm, but also at the same time, it is important to know that this isn't some kind of, very, something that happens all the time. Like, this is more significant than that. And there are many examples of players not being able to come back from specific type of injuries like this. I know Daniel Popper said Jack Conklin was someone, the tackle, that was able to come back. I believe he said 9 months, less than 12 months for sure. Since this happened in the offseason, he will have a full year to be able to try to get back to that form again. And that is something that I think is significant. This isn't something that happened, in the middle of the season, to where you're going to have to try to kind of rush him to get him back for week 1 next year. You should be able to take your time. You should be able to, trust the process a little bit with this one and not have to rush it, which, I think with JC Jackson, he came back really quickly because this happened in season and he was already back on the field, I think even for some maybe off-season workouts or at least the beginning of training camp. And look what happened. You know what I mean? It wasn't great. Take your time with this. This is a huge investment. And the other part of this is his contract isn't going anywhere. I'm super happy for the Rashawn Slater, the person, that he got that contract. And that's why you don't practice before you get your money, right? Because this would have absolutely affected the money that he got in that contract.
Of course.
But from a team perspective, I know you guys, are in it for the name on the front of the jersey, just like the players are, but they cannot get out of this. The best case scenario for them is that he can come back and get close to that form. And the good thing is if he's even 90% of what he was before the injury, he will be well worth that money. So I think
still
that's
better
the good
than
news.
most.
And the good news is too, you have a 1-for-1 replacement, or at least as close as you're going to, on the team with Joe Alt. And I'm very bullish on what Joe Alt can do. The problem is it also means Trey Pipkins is coming back to be your right tackle again. So we're going to talk about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat, and it's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. And one of the things I love about it is how collaborative it is for me and my wife to both use it and to track both of us at the same time, so we can both make sure that each of us didn't buy, 600 diapers at the same time, but also be able to see what you're spending a little too much money on, so you can try to beat that the next month and give yourself goals while having the full picture in front of you. But you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. This episode is also presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. That's why me, David, and the Locked On Chargers podcast are all playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And that is one of the great things about Yahoo Fantasy is when terrible things happen to your team, you have other guys that you can root for and maybe something that makes you feel a lot better on what could be a tough Sunday. And I love that. But to also celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, they have 28 big new features, including one that you're going to definitely want to check out. They just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. David, there are more ramifications that we haven't got to get to yet, but I do think that one of the great things for the Chargers in this specific situation is that you have a player you really trust to protect Justin Herbert's blind side. And left tackle, right tackle, the money's the same. They're both very, very important. But being able to see a guy that's beating their blocker in front of you is still less important than not, being able to see the guy that's coming from your blind side and potentially can hit you without you knowing he's there. And the Chargers do have that, David. If there's one thing I'm not worried about in this whole shuffling of what's going to happen, it's Joe Alt having to move to the left side.
Absolutely not. And you definitely shouldn't, because that's the position he played at the highest level of college football throughout his college career. He was the consensus top offensive lineman and top offensive tackle in the draft, bar none. Nobody had any concerns or questions about it because he's such a technician. He has unbelievable size at 6'8", and with his just unbelievable wingspan, he is already a fantastic pass protector and run blocker, and by all accounts looks like he's got even bigger and even stronger this year. And we actually saw him play a game at left tackle for the Chargers last year, week 18, where he just gave up zero pressures, not even sacks, not even any pressures of any kind. So this dude right here is ready-made. You put him on the left side, in my opinion, it's the most important side. He's ready for it. He's primed for it. It's about what everything else means by putting him over there on the left side.
Yeah, and the only thing that sucks about him going to left tackle, which he 100% will be the left tackle, right? It's what they've basically told you already when he was holding out. And I was like, why are they practicing him so much at left tackle? It's almost like they saw this coming because they've had him doing it. He's been staying at, frosty with it, as Greg Roman put. But this is his natural position, and the only question coming out of college about Joe Alt was, could he switch to the right side? Not if he could play left side on the NFL level. So he will be great there. The one thing that the reason this is such an impactful kind of all-around injury to the Chargers and why it hurts them so much is now you don't get Joe Alt and Mekhi Becton next to each other on that right side to just totally have the size to overpower people. Like Zion Johnson's a good run blocker, but it was the sheer size of a 6'8" Joe Alt and a 6'7" Mekhi Becton next to each other, pushing people around. That was very, exciting and enticing. But Joe Alt should be great on the left side. That's the one thing I don't worry about. I know the big thing a lot of people were worried about is Trey Pipkins, who will be taking over at right tackle. And let's just start with this. Trey Pipkins is the right tackle. Trey Pipkins was not cut when he was one of the most obvious cap casualties for this reason. That is why he was there, because they didn't have anybody in the scenario that something happened to Joe Alt or Rashawn Slater to give you anything in that spot, right? You're talking about Ryan Nelson's and UDFA's, really, is what it would have been. It looks good that they kept him. And this is the thing. I know people were like, hey, well, maybe you move Mekhi Becton to right tackle. Maybe you move Sawyer back out to tackle, even though he never has played right tackle in the NFL level. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be Trey Pipkins at right tackle. Those other guys are all guards in their eyes, and that's where they're going to play. And you can argue about it if you want to, but like this, Trey Pipkins is easily the best option you have right now to play right tackle. The problem is, in 2023, the last time that we saw him playing right tackle, he allowed the fourth most sacks amongst all tackles with 9 and allowed the sixth most pressures with 49. That was the last time we saw him playing right tackle. 2022, it was much better, right? Before he got that contract, 97.3 pass blocking efficiency, only 2 sacks allowed during that entire season and 28 pressures. That would be a huge boost for you. If he could give you that, and you have a coaching staff, right? And he's better at tackle than he is at guard, which is why it doesn't make sense to move those other guys around, because then you're just putting Trey Pipkins in a worse position on your offensive line. If you can get to that, that is a good backup to have. He is someone that is at least shown he can play at an average level. And I'm not going to say he's going to, but what I'm saying is like, everyone's like, man, like Trey Pipkins isn't even the part of this offensive line that necessarily worries me the most out there, just because at least I know he can play at a level, and I hope that this training staff, this coaching staff can get him back to where we've already seen he can get to.
Yeah, and at least this year, it's all been a focus on playing tackle for Trey Pipkins. It's not the trying to transition to guard. It's all been tackle the entire time. He's been the swing tackle, so at least he's been focusing on playing that position the entire offseason. And yeah, I mean, you hope that at least you get somewhere in the middle. You don't want that 2023 form. You would love to have that 2022 form, right? That's much more like it. But if you get something just in the middle of that, I think you would be pretty happy with that level of productivity, especially when you consider there's no guaranteed money left on his contract. He's, I think, for a starting right tackle, I mean, as a swing tackle, you're like, that's a little bit too much. But as a starting right tackle, for him to be making around $7 million, like that
this cap hits 9, so
cap hits $9 million,
which sucks when it's on your bench. But yeah, you don't feel it's not a bad thing to have as a starting player for sure.
No, and he's had over 3,000 snaps at the right tackle position, so there is experience there. But yeah, it's not ideal, obviously, that the Chargers are having to move people around. But Mekhi Becton is a guard. He has played his best football by far in the National Football League at guard. He should stay at guard. And Trey Pipkins is not a guard. He is a tackle. That's where he should be. There shouldn't be too many moving parts. I think we're done with the experiments. Let's play the players at the positions that they should be playing at.
Yeah, and they really need Mekhi Becton to just get back in general, right? According to Popper, he hasn't practiced since July 28th. And Popper, I mean, I don't know what he knows. I don't know how much he knows, but he seems pretty concerned about the fact that we haven't seen Mekhi out there since then. Not even in a walkthrough setting, he said. Implied there's more to the story. The only thing we've heard about it from this coaching staff is Greg Roman saying it's extremely minor. It's the same thing he said about Ladd McConkey, though, and both of those guys have been out since July 28th. So they really need Mekhi Becton back, and not only that, they need him to play at a great level at the right guard position, because now you're not only asking him to potentially help you and kind of give a boost to your interior, because that's the only big upgrade that you made in this offseason, but you're also hoping that he can be a boost next to someone like a Trey Pipkins, right? So like now you're needing him to kind of give help on both sides and be a stabilizing factor on that right side, because without, Trey Pipkins playing right tackle, or if it was still Pipkins at guard, or even if it was Sawyer at guard and also Zion and Bozeman, you've seen that, right? Like you don't want to go back to those three that started on the interior in that playoff game being back together. And that's what has been such a kind of spotlight from this injury, is seeing kind of like, this is why you go improve other spots, because now you're sitting here and you need Mekhi Becton to come back, because you have 3 gigantic question marks now. 60% of your offensive line you have seen fail doing these same positions on this team before. And that's not including Mekhi Becton, who's been out and has a history of injuries.
Also, like, this puts more pressure on Bradley Bozeman at the center position as well, because he's not going to be able to get as much help. I think now with Mekhi Becton at right guard, he's going to have to focus more on trying to take care of and cover up what's going on with Trey Pipkins, and they're probably going to have to put more help on that side too, with the tight ends and with more chips. Still feel a lot more confident than Joe Alt can be out there on an island, but you might have to put more resources on that right side to help Trey Pipkins out a little bit more. But yeah, a little bit more pressure on Bradley Bozeman now, with Mekhi having to focus more on that right side.
Yeah, and I think more pressure on this coaching staff to get more out of these dudes. Like, you go and get Jim Harbaugh for a reason, to give you an edge, to get more out of his players, to be able to really steer the ship and calm the waters when terrible disasters happen. That's why you go get a leader like Jim Harbaugh. And everyone says the cliche thing about the next man up. Like, you have to be able to maximize what we know is now a flawed unit. And I just think that with this group, the reason, if you had improved all three spots, right? If you went all in on the interior and you felt good about all three of those spots, just losing a Rashawn Slater wouldn't feel like the end of the world, because you can help him with a running back. You can help him with a tight end. You have to help three different players on this offensive line right now, it feels like, and that's just impossible. And I think that's why them not doing more in the interior affects them, even with an injury to a tackle like Rashawn Slater. But we still have more to get into. We don't want this to feel like a totally negative show. And although there's bad injury news, there's also some good injury news, because Rocket Sanders is back and looking really good at practice, and we should be able to see him for the first time on Sunday. I don't know if Najee Harris will be able to see him. We're getting into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. And I'm a dad now, so I always need a 5-Hour Energy when I'm on the links. But golf is all about the good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of the clubhouse go-to without having to chase down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. David, let's turn the page here a little bit. We do have a little bit more injury news this segment, but I do want to talk about this game on Sunday. We were planning on having more to talk about with this game and kind of what we're excited to watch about it, like we were last week, but obviously the show has gotten turned on its head. But I do want to talk about some things and some reasons to potentially be excited, because the thing is like, the season's not over. It's not. Like, this has an impact on your season for sure. Is the season over? Is there nothing to root for? No, absolutely not. But this team is going to have to turn the page and figure out what's next and find it and make this team as talented as possible, which is exciting to hear what's been coming out about Rocket Sanders, because what really helps an offensive line, and they help each other, is a good running game. And maybe there's a new guy in the mix there. But thank you all for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out Locked On Bets with Kevin Rogers and Lee Sterling, giving you daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. David, let's talk about Rocket Sanders, a guy that kind of made the list of the players we were bummed out that we didn't get to see in the first preseason game and the Hall of Fame game, but he's been back out. He's been in a few padded practices in a row. It feels like he's a full go to be playing on Sunday this weekend in the second Chargers preseason game. And according to Daniel Popper and Eric Smith, he's had some really impressive moments over the last couple of practices, to where I'm very, very excited to see Rocket Sanders for the first time.
I feel like there's been such a build-up to this. I feel like there's just been so much anticipation for what Rocket Sanders was going to be and how he was going to be able to help this football team. It was almost a foregone conclusion that he was going to be a guy that was going to be squarely in the mix from the very beginning. So now I feel like it's time we get to be able to actually see him on the football field, see how he moves, see that speed, that explosion, that power that I think we've all been hearing about with Rocket Sanders, and want to see, the plays that he's made and the momentum that he's been able to garner so far in training camp. Now it's time to show that on the football field. Now it's time to show the class what you've learned.
he was one of the guys that we tagged right away as an undrafted free agent to watch and someone who could potentially, push for a roster spot because at that point, Hassan Haskins, Kamani Vidal, even in year 2, were very uncertain to be roster locks this year, and we thought Rocket could push them. Daniel Popper said on his Hops and Pop was something surprising, and he said that he still thinks that Sanders has a shot at RB2 going into the season, depending on what happens with Najee Harris, right? Because Najee Harris, you assume if he would come back soon, for a guy that, we totally expected to be RB2, we'll still have a shot at that. But that is something we have to talk about too, because there was a Snapchat of Najee Harris showing his face, quote unquote, the most we've seen him. And even after this, even after the latest, I still can't tell you definitively that he has 2 eyes. I'm guessing he does, but that left eye that he has is pretty gnarly looking still. It looked like he couldn't even open his left eye at all as he was walking around the field in a visor, which David, Jesus, but like it was very, if not fully shut, very squinty and maybe barely open at all. And it's pretty crazy because, man, that was a month ago, over a month ago now. That was, the 4th of July when that happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you feel better or worse about seeing him on the field in that condition, but it didn't look like something, that was going to get cleared in the next couple of days by any means.
Didn't make me feel better. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I mean, it looks pretty bad. I mean, the fact that, we're talking about a month later and he can't even open that left eye at all, that really feels like they were definitely underselling the actual severity of this injury. And right now, as we're talking about this, we are less than a month away from the season getting kicked off in Brazil against the Chiefs. And as of right now, I think it's really hard to believe that Najee Harris is going to be ready to go for that football game.
Super hard to say. And it feels like even after seeing him, it doesn't really move the needle and I'm feeling better that he'll be out there. Like, the thing is like, even if he can't see out of that eye right now, like you'd think there'd be at least a little bit of a bump up as far as, the physical preparation, because even Keenan Allen just told you, he's not in game shape right now. He's not in football shape right now. And he got up at the podium. Najee Harris is not in football shape right now. He just can't be. I mean, when we see him, he's barely doing anything. Like, even with the eye injury, and eye injury shouldn't be, causing you to not do any conditioning, right? Or like stuff like that. I know the Chargers do some weird conditioning stuff with weights and stuff, and maybe that's depth perception, being able to see things is obviously an issue right now. But like, you'd think it'd be more physically they'd be doing to get him ready. And maybe there's more that we're not seeing there as far as him being able to kind of stay in shape. But man, yeah, it was a rough look to see him for sure. But I think another part of, the Rashawn Slater thing now is just kind of an opening on this team at the tackle position. I mean, I think we thought the only 3 tackles really that would make this roster were Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, and Trey Pipkins. Now, I'm definitely going to be keeping a closer eye, David, in this preseason game at the other tackles that are on the roster. And there's not much there. Maybe their best chance is Ryan Nelson, a UFL guy who played the last 3 seasons in the UFL and, won like all UFL honors and was a highly decorated player in a much lower level of football. Very much kind of Storm Norton, Donald Parham vibes. And like both those guys made it, right? And were able, like, Storm Norton, not the worst swing tackle in the world if you need someone to start, for a little bit. And he came from the XFL at that point. Yeah. So maybe that's your best chance. The only thing I really remember hearing him right now is like his first practice, Khalil Mack just went out there and straight up abused him. But I will tell you one thing, I'm going to be watching him a lot more closely in this upcoming game now.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't think you can really put it or hold it against them that a future Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, worked over a guy who is just making his introduction to the NFL. But yeah, I think he's the most likely guy. I mean, obviously there's Corey Stewart as well out of Purdue. That's one of the other free agent. The other options. That's an undrafted free agent. But yeah, I would say Ryan Nelson probably has the biggest opportunity here to be able to make the roster. And of course, especially now, there's absolutely no way that the Chargers are not scouring every single possible place to be able to find some additions on that offensive line, whether it is somebody they sign on the street, which there isn't many, or looking to try to put together some type of trade, which also is something that doesn't happen very often with offensive linemen.
And I know a lot of people are saying, bring someone in, sign someone, trade for someone. It's just not that simple, unfortunately. It's not. There's no one out there that's going to be a for sure upgrade over Trey Pipkins right now. Like, that's just the fact of the matter. Like, I went through the offensive free agents. You know, there are former first round picks like, you know, Jedrick Wills, for example. There's guys like George Fant out there. You already have who's going to be your starting right tackle. I do anticipate them going out and signing someone, but I think it's going to be much more for a new, you know, kind of swing tackle to replace the spot that Trey Pipkins left open. So that's just kind of how I see it right now. Last guy, David, definitely a big game for Taylor Heinicke. We'll be watching him with his first chance, feeling kind of like he now has to outplay, you know, Trey Lance for the rest of the preseason to keep his job potentially.
Yeah, no question about it. I think it is definitely a big game for him. And for Trey Lance, he took his opportunity and he looked the part. You know, he looked like a guy that, you know, could be that backup quarterback who was able to keep you afloat. They can put a system around him and set him up for success. Taylor Heinicke needs to go out there and show everybody that he's not only been a backup quarterback, but he's started games in this league and that he is capable of keeping the Chargers afloat in, obviously, the event that Justin Herbert is not on the football field. It is very much a battle, and he's going to have to show out here on Sunday.
Yeah, he will. And it just feels like, you know, whatever leg up he started with from being with the team last year and the Chargers trading for him is definitely gone if he's not looking up at you know, Trey Lance now. I've always thought that Greg Roman really wants a more mobile quarterback, and Taylor Heinicke can be mobile, but he's never been kind of like a true read option type of, you know, dual threat where the designed running game is part of his game. He's been more of a scramble, like wild on a last minute drive kind of thing, and he does that well. It's just a different part of like game planning, what you would do with Trey Lance as opposed to Taylor Heinicke. They traded for, you know, in a desperate situation last year with Easton Stick as their main backup for Taylor Heinicke last year. We didn't really get an extended sample size, thankfully, because Justin Herbert was out there most of the season. For him to go and secure that and make him kind of immovable this year, I mean, he's not totally safe. He's going to go have to play and earn his spot. And we didn't see him in the preseason last year. So it'll be interesting to see what they have this year. So that's going to wrap things up for us for today's show. I should be on, if the squad show happens on Sunday, I'll be on there for the post-game part of that with the guys over there. Excited to get my first little taste of the squad show this season. If I can get on there, excited about that. But also just one last point here, like 2022 ended in disaster in the worst game I've ever seen. But I'm pretty sure 2022, the Chargers lost Rashawn Slater in week 3. They lost Joey Bosa in week 3. And they lost Corey Linsley in week 3. Right? That feels bigger than what happened today. I mean, it does. The Chargers made the playoffs that year and should have won a playoff game.
Sure did.
Now, their schedule this year is really tough, and I get that. The season is not over. The Chargers coaching staff is going to have to earn their keep. Their quarterback's going to have to be able to stay healthy. He's had worse lines than this in his career. He's going to have to stay healthy so he can evade and make plays on his own, and everyone else is going to have to pick up a little bit more of the slack. This is a devastating injury that hurts this team's chances. But the season isn't over yet, and there's a lot to still be excited about, and we'll still be with you here every day to talk about it. But thank you guys, as always, even on the toughest days, for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from as well, because we still should be doing a live show of our own on Sunday night to be recapping this preseason game at week 2 of the preseason for the Chargers at least. But you can also find the show every day on our social media. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at LockedOnLAC, on Instagram at LockedOnChargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Hey, we've always been realists who can find the positives while not just blowing smoke. You know, that is what we're going to continue to do as the only daily Chargers podcast out there, and keep telling you what this team has to do to reach the goals that they want to, you know, have for themselves. But we're back with you guys on Sunday night for a live recap of the Chargers' second preseason game. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.